Hi, I'm Warren Zenna, founder and CEO of the CRO Collective, and welcome to the CRO Spotlight podcast. This show is focused exclusively on the success of chief revenue officers. Each week, we have an open, frank, and free-form conversation with top experts in the revenue space about the CRO role and its critical impact on B2B businesses. This podcast is the place to be for CROs, sales and marketing leaders who aspire to become CROs, and founders who are looking to appoint a CRO or want to support their CRO to succeed. Thanks for listening. Now let's go mix it up. It's Philippe, correct?
Philippe, yeah.
Where are you from? What's your French?
I'm originally Dutch from the Netherlands, but
nice.
Very French name. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. Well, welcome, and really, it's great to have you here. You're the Chief Revenue Officer of Airbase. Now, how big is Airbase? How big of a company is it?
Yeah, we have about 400 people in the company.
Okay.
We are Series B, 16 countries around the world. But yeah.
Okay. And if you don't mind, just give me a little brief overview of what your customers are, who you serve, what you do for them, so to speak.
Yeah, so we are a modern procure-to-pay platform that works for people in the office of the CFO. And we allow companies to consolidate all their spend from a company in one platform. And so we work a lot with accountants, controllers, and since a year also with procurement people. And they all tend to roll up into the office of the CFO.
So is it like Expensify, similar to that?
Well, it is very broad. So we focus, first of all, on mid-market companies. So companies between 75 employees all the way up to like 10,000. Mm-hmm. We don't do SMB and we don't do Fortune 5,000. Mm-hmm. And the platform is broad in the sense that you can consolidate all your spend, which is on one hand accounts payable automation. So that's payments of vendors through invoices, through ACH. We have guided procurement, what we call, which is a purchasing request module. So if employees want to do a request for spend, they can go in there and they can guide it through the process. Then we have expense management, and you mentioned one of the other players in the space. And then we have corporate cards. And basically, those are all the ways that companies spend money. And the issue that companies ran into, like, because there's different ways of spending money, it's hard to have control and visibility. And that problem gets bigger when companies get bigger because they get more employees, they go into more countries, they get more vendors, they have more currencies, there are more tax implications. So finance becomes exponentially harder when you grow. And we help these teams manage that complexity so they can focus on being strategic.
Understood. Great.
Yeah.
Great. And how long have you been the Chief Revenue Officer at that company? How long have you been with the company?
I've been a bit more than 2 years, and I joined as the Chief Revenue Officer.
So you came aboard as a CRO. Interesting. Yeah. Let's talk about this. Yeah. I'm really fascinated by this. So when they hired you as a CRO, the first question I have for you is, how did they, and I guess you, define that role at your company?
Yeah. I'm basically responsible for all the go-to-market teams. And so I think the role of a CRO is typical to align the different go-to-market teams. So that goes from marketing to sales, solutions consulting, and then onboarding, and then customer success and renewals. It's ultimately what the CRO does is the full life cycle of a customer. So that is really critical. I think there's two other things that are important for CROs. One is, in a way, you represent with your team the voice of the customer back into the company. And that manifests itself not only in support, but how you work closely with product and with engineering. And then finally, I think as a CRO, a difference with a VP sales is that you're also really part of the company leadership. So you're ultimately responsible for the strategy of the company, but also the growth of the company. So yeah, there's the CEO, but from a go-to-market point of view, the buck stops with you.
Well, bravo to you, sir, and your company for doing it right, because I don't hear this often. So you just basically described the job perfectly, and that's really great to hear a company is utilizing the role properly. So that leads me to the next series of questions. So were you the first CRO of the company?
Yeah, I was the first formal CRO. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think it was? I mean, if you don't mind your understanding of the culture that you're in, why you think it was that your company at the stage they were in recognized that they needed a leader like that?
Yeah, so they went through the to the next phase of growth. That is number one. So they just got bigger, and as a result, complexity got higher.
Mhm.
The company also wanted to move more upmarket, so really into mid market and early enterprise. So there were some changes in motions that we wanted to do, and we wanted to make sure that all functions were really super aligned. And um, before I joined, there was a sense like, okay, there is some alignment, but there's still some siloed thinking between the functions, and how can we bridge that? So, for example, how do you have seamless cooperation between marketing and sales, but equally between sales and onboarding once the deal is closed, and so on and so forth?
Well, look, I obviously I am completely aligned with you on the reasoning. I guess and it's great. I appreciate that answer because it's great. They're correct. They did recognize the problems, but the reason I have a business is because most companies don't. They
Yeah,
recognize problems. I mean,
yeah,
they do see complexities. They say, "Oh, wow, we got too big for X, Y, or Z," or our company's changing and we need to rethink the way we're doing things, et cetera. And they
yeah,
recognize symptomatic problems like they have a sales problem or they have a funnel problem or they have a marketing problem. But unfortunately, I don't see across the board companies having the maturity to know that what we have is an alignment problem, which you know and I know is a systemic problem that needs to be fixed through the sort of position that you're in. And
yeah,
so what they tend to do is they elevate people. Oh, we'll increase the responsibility of our salesperson, sales leader, or we'll make our marketing person more responsible, or we'll
yeah,
create a committee. They do all sorts of nutty things that don't address the problem because many times, now I want to ask you this question is
yeah,
they already have entrenched roles that they don't want to disrupt. So many
yeah,
times what I see happen is you have a company that gets to the stage that yours was at when they hired you 2 years ago, and they go,
yeah,
well, we already have a CMO, and we don't want to disrupt that person's, perch. So we're gonna,
yeah,
have a CRO, and that person will run sales, and they'll work together, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah.
What was it you think about your company that understood the need? And I ask this question because I'm trying to get my listeners to see what it's like to hear about a company that got this right
Yeah.
and how they can get it right.
Yeah, so first of all, we have a second-time founder who's very experienced. So it is his second company. First one was successful, and he's doing it again. So he is that obviously helps. Then secondly, we got a great board. We got very good VCs with very experienced people. They help us as well. But then I think they saw that. Alignment between sales and marketing was not perfect, and there were opportunities to optimize there. They also felt that okay, we can do more in the expansion cycle and the renewal cycle. The renewal numbers were okay, but there was still opportunity to get better. They also wanted to keep innovating on the portfolio. So Airbase is innovating very fast. They have high product velocity. But then, if you keep releasing new product, how do you then leverage that to your base? So how do you then drive that expansion motion? So those were some of the questions that I had and that they had, and yeah, those they wanted to address. And look, the way I've always had the sense from early on in my career that the big levers in companies are often cross-functional. And yes, you need to really optimize within your function, but the big levers are often cross-functional. And I always felt that yeah, sales is in a way the tip of the spear, where everything that the company comes together in that. But that also means that there's a huge mutual dependency. And
Yes.
so when I hear companies say, okay, hey, we want to grow, let's hire way more salespeople, without looking at like their top of funnel, or how is the conversion of that funnel going? Yeah, that doesn't work. And currently, definitely in times like these where everybody's more trying to be more efficient, that definitely doesn't work. So you got to approach this really holistically. And I feel the same thing for. It's back to that point on representing the customer. If you really believe that we have one of our Airbase's value is obsess about making the customer happy. That also means that you really understand what their pains are and try to be honest on what you're doing well and what you're not doing well, and recognizing where you have like deficits, and then trying to work with your teams internally. For example, the product team, we try to prioritize. Okay, what is feedback from our customers? Where do they say we have gaps in our platform, or what do they want to see next? And yeah, through like internal prioritization of these asks from customers, you can really also, yeah, through close collaboration with your product team, you can really give guidance on like here's what to build next, and build like pretty effective strategies. But there is a huge dependency between go-to-market teams and product and engineering, and equally between sales, marketing, and all these other teams. They go really hand in hand.
No doubt. We're on the same page. I just probably have a conversation like this maybe once a quarter,
Yeah.
where I'd speak to somebody who gets this and is working like this. I mean, in a way, strangely, I don't want to say this sounds a little opportunistic, but thank God, because that's why I have a business. But the reality is that I really do want to change this. I do see a future, frankly, not too far off, frankly,
Yeah.
where companies all operate the way you're talking about. They come to this realization sooner, not after having made a bunch of mistakes and figuring it out the hard way, which happens most of the time. Most of the time when clients get to the point where they figure this out, it's because they tried it their own way 3 or 4 times and it didn't work, and they finally get it together. In your case, it sounds like you had leadership that got this, understood this, and built the company this way. And I tout this frequently when I speak to my clients, who most of them are chief revenue officers like yourself, that, the role is intended to be deployed the way you're being deployed.
Yeah.
But the reason why it doesn't most of the time, it has very little to do with whether you're capable of doing that or not. It has to do with whether the company's going to let you or not.
Yeah.
Because most of the time they won't. Most of the time what happens is they have had the CRO run the sales organization. Because like you said, they're obsessed with the sales organization. Understandably, it's where the money comes in. But it's just one part of the equation. And so I guess I would ask you, this question, which is, given the fact that your company seems to be really well organized and strategically structured, how did you get into this? Like, when you got this role, why did they choose Philippe to do this job as opposed to the other people that they could have chose?
Yeah. So I guess I was lucky early in my career, but I always had this mindset. One of my values is always learning. My parents were both in education, so I grew up and learned that with the fact that learning is very important. So I always have taken opportunities to learn and develop. And I started my career. My background is in engineering. Then I even worked in manufacturing. Then did my MBA. But then I joined Dell a long time ago, and I was lucky enough to do a bunch of different roles. I did, for example, my first role there was FP&A. And FP&A, financial planning and analysis, gives you a great understanding of like how companies operate, how they look at financial plans. And I tell you, this is a skill that I use as a CRO every day, because ultimately you need to translate your financial plan into like a commercial plan. You need to understand like how your reps are ramping, about capacity, attrition, all of these things. So that's one thing. Then in Dell, they actually moved me later on to like a marketing role, and which was one of the harder transitions. And
why did they do that? You think? Why did they do that?
They had a need, and they had a need in marketing. They thought I could do it, and later in my career, actually, I went to sales and then back to marketing. And the reason that they moved me later to I led marketing for large enterprise for Europe. I had 125 marketeers. The reason that they took me for that role, because actually I had a sales background. So they were looking to bring sales and marketing really close together. And I had been doing these sales roles, I had been doing these marketing roles, and that's what they were looking for. So anyway, when I joined later on, I joined a big telco named Vodafone. I led large teams of over 1,000 people, but there I had the one reason why I joined this company is because it allowed me to do these broader roles. And this conducting role of having these different parts of the orchestra play together in harmony, yeah, it's just really a lot of fun, and it's something that I really enjoy. And that was clearly the fact that I had done it before, a reason for Airbase to also lean into it. Now,
Got
I
it.
will say that the learning always continues.
Sure.
Back when I was at Dropbox a few years ago, it was the first time that I was really became responsible for customer success. And at the time, this was around 2017, 2018 timeframe. There was customer success was still relatively new. I knew a little bit about it, but not a lot. So I felt I had to educate myself, and I spent a lot of time with folks like Nick Mehta from Gainsight. I read all his books, went to a bunch of seminars, met with a number of other CROs to really learn the craft. So I will say that you got to keep doing these things, because the technology is evolving. The way sales, marketing, customer success works is evolving. The market is evolving. So the learning never stops, but you got to keep doing those things to remain relevant and to stay effective.
That's interesting. So you've been fortunate enough to work at organizations that recognize the importance of cross-functional education and knowledge, intelligence, and experience, because they put you in jobs because you possessed the opposing knowledge that would apply itself there. Most of my clients are siloed. They run sales, they're kept in sales. They keep on going after sales jobs. They don't sort of expand their horizons very much, and they stick to their strengths, so to speak, right? So, so it sounds like it's a combination of companies that recognize cross-functional competencies, and you, who's you're kind of a learning person. You want to try new things, and you're competent at doing a lot of things.
The best CROs that I know are always learning, right? They're always trying new things. They look at other CROs. I sometimes go to these meetups organized by VC and so on with CROs, and you learn from great players. The other day there was a session with the CEO of Zscaler. Now we went there, and there are really strong leaders that you can learn from, and I see these careers as like having like a backpack. And the way you have a career is you put like these experience in your backpack, and it doesn't need to be a straight line, but from every role you learn new things. You make mistakes, you learn from those, and you try to get better. And look, I listen to podcasts every week. I still read sales books every week. The other day we were working with my marketing team on again, in the light of efficiency. Okay, what are other ways we can build brand? Other ways we can create pipeline, and one of the things that we wanted to lean into was SEO. But I had been a marketing leader, but I did not know a lot about SEO. Marketing leaders come in many shapes and forms. So, I said, let me buy a couple of books, read those, listen to a bunch of things, and then later on we had lots of meetings with agencies and so on. But you learn, and half a year later, you know more. But and those things you got to keep doing. And now it's the same with how to apply AI and so on. So you got to stay up to date.
100%. You're right. And you have to always be learning and building, because what's happening now in the marketplace right now, it's insane. The new information that's coming into place. I mean, monthly, it's like everything's just accelerating. I've never seen anything like this before. And I see a huge shift, not only economically, but technologically. Even, management is changing the way that they're running things. And it's I think we're in between two phases of business right now. I think it's going to be an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So here's a question, I guess, is that when you got hired as the CRO and they brought you in, what was the thing that you did for the first, let's say, 3 to 6 months? What was the first 3 to 6 months of your job like there?
Yeah. So the first thing is there are internal and external stakeholders. Let's start with the external ones. The first ones are your customers. And then there's partners in the board. But let's start with your customers. Now, it's important that you really understand the customers that you're selling into. What are the personas? So in our case, the accountant, the controller, the procurement person. And I know what an accountant does, but to really understand day to day what makes their life hard, what are they running into? And I'll give you an example. A few weeks ago, I was chatting to a customer, and this is one of the things I learned. Customers tend to have to pay and process thousands of invoices per month. So can you imagine that you're at home and you need to process like 5 of these stacks of like invoices every month, huge stacks, and they cannot be double payment, they cannot be fraudulent invoices, and then ultimately everything has to reconcile. Now, when you really spend time with accountants and how they do that and how they close their books, I was chatting to a customer the other day, and there was this lady in the conference, and she said, "Yeah, my team of 3 processes 10,000 invoices every month, and it's so painful. It's so manual. We're afraid to make mistakes. Yeah, there's got to be a better way." And yeah, once you really go deep on understanding their pains, then you start to understand what also your company is about and what you're trying to solve for. Or procurement people that said, "Okay, we would like people to follow the process, but they don't because the tools are so hard to use," and things like that. So I think spending a lot of time with customers is important. It's also important for your team. I believe that sales teams want to see that the CRO also leads from the front, takes calls, or the customer success team when a customer is unhappy. That happens, right? So you got to support your team and show up and listen to the customers why they are not happy, and I think that is important. Then the on the internal side, it starts with like diagnosing your team. Do you have the right leaders in place? Do they understand their roles and responsibilities? And then I always say that you're part of 2 teams, and that links to the previous discussion that we had. Is you have your own team, but then spending a lot of time with product, with engineering, with finance, with legal, the CEO, obviously, that is all important. So having regular one-on-ones and being aligned with the CEO, the CFO, and all these others is like critical.
How did the organization prepare the company for your role? So they knew what the hell you did and who this guy is and how we report to him and how do we support him and what disruptions is this person going to make and things. And how do they do that?
Yeah, they context is really important, right? So it starts with the CEO sets the context of like, this is where we are as a business. Here's what we need to do next, and this is why we're making the change. So start with why, explaining the why for the change, and putting that in the context of the company is really important. And in Airbase's case, it was really the next stage of growth that was really important, and the importance of bringing these having these functions play together. That was explained very well, but clearly the founder CEO played a very big role in that. Then the other thing is that I think it's important that in the first back to 30, 60, 90 days is that you listen a lot and don't try to make very big decisions early on, because you just don't know exactly what's going on. So you think you know, but you don't, and your opinion might change over time. And I usually try to come in with a few like hypotheses based on the interviews that you've had, and think, okay, there might be opportunities or issues in the next 3 or 4 areas, and then you go in and you start having all these conversations and you listen to people, and you might be right on 2 or 3 and you might be wrong on two others. But at the end of the 60 days, you sort of know like, okay, this is where the key things are that I need to work on, and then you start building a plan together. And when we use OKRs a lot, so objectives and key results, to keep the company on track on a quarterly basis, and also to communicate to the company what are the most important things. And you build those together with your team. That is a co-creation process, and we do that every quarter. We've just done it now for next quarter, and this is how you then start. And going into your second quarter, you got to be really ready with plan and execute.
Mm-hmm.
Time always goes quickly.
For
so
sure.
You want to move fast, but you you tend to want to hold off on big decisions in the beginning. So
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, it depends on the situation. I've worked with CROs who went into companies that are in distress, and they
yeah,
have to
okay,
make big
yeah,
decisions in the beginning because that's kind of why they were hired. In fact, a lot of times it's some form of like almost like abdication. It's like, I don't want to make this decision. Let's hire a CRO to make these decisions. That way I can kind
yeah,
of keep my face with the company. Seems like you were brought in at a more, I'd say, paced time when the company recognized that they were ready for this and they had it all set up.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because the experience I've had is, when you bring on somebody whom has such high and wide remit, right? They oversee all these different things. Now, all of a sudden, you're responsible for multiple components of the business. The people who are the stakeholders in those businesses are threatened by this new hire, right? What's this going to mean for me? Do I have less power now? Do I have less say? Do I have a new boss? I used to report to my CEO. I don't anymore. My budget going to be taken away? Am I going to be evaluated differently? How do you deal with those things when you know that those are obviously human reactions to someone coming in taking
yeah,
over these positions?
yeah. That's a great question. I think it all depends on you when you come in. Um, but the first thing is to do is really build relationships and get to know these people, get to know what them personally, but also what makes them tick and what motivates them and what are their needs. Um, and again, I think it's important to like listen to them and understand, get their view on the business, get their view on what would help them. I think it's important to regularly ask, hey, how can I help you with your next step? Um, I think there should also be a mindset of like humbleness. You've been here in this company for a long time. I'm coming new in. I don't have the knowledge that you have. Yeah, I bring other experience, but I feel that when you come into a company, that you should not have a predisposed playbook. You should you should take a very situational approach. Understand what the situation is. Understand what the stage of the company is and the customer stage of the team, and then formulate your plan on that. And not like, don't take a cookie cutter approach. So, and again, that plan you build together with your team through the relationships that you build. So, relationships first. Get to know people, listen to them, and then start formulating a plan together.
Yeah, okay. Agreed. There's no doubt. Empathy, relationship, humility, no doubt. At the same time, you're being given the responsibility to evolve the company to operate in a way that hasn't before, which
Yeah,
means you're forced to have to evaluate the current resources and determine if
yeah,
they're appropriate for the next phase of growth. And that
yeah,
might result in you having to say, you got to get out of here. You're no good for us
yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
So how do you confront those things? So you're in this humility tour, let's call it, right? You're
yeah,
out there making relationships and listening, but you realize that, some people just, they have to be replaced, or I have to move people around.
yeah,
I want to hear your thinking on this because, again, just for context, the people listening to this show are people in your position, and they want to know, how do they deal with this sort of stuff? Like, I'm going to be brought onto a company as a chief revenue officer, and I'm going to be faced with all these decisions. Whether I do them in a humble way or I do them in a nice way,
yeah,
I still have to do them. And so,
yeah.
what's the sort of your thoughts on the right approaches to, and maybe even more personal examples of things you had to do in your situation that may have been not popular, but you needed to do them,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There are always things that are not working, right? That is the
Of
case,
course.
and you got to
Yeah.
assess your team on like, do you think that you have the right players on board? And yeah, there have been situations in the past, and I won't name names, but there
Of
was a
course.
situation where there was a customer success leader. This is not an Airbase, but a previous company that did not work out. And how do you know? First of all, um, people know in the organization, and people, when you go deeper in the organization, people will tell you. So you start to like pick up on things. Then, um, in this case, this person was like not very data oriented. So when you think about like how is a leader diagnosing their situation, and how are they diagnosing where the problems are,
Mhm.
then you want to see sort of like a data driven approach. And when that is not there, when there's not a clear diagnosis, when it's not data driven, highly anecdotal, yeah, that is usually a red flag for me. And then, you gotta pretty early on also like give clear feedback on what the expectations are and what your goals are. And if someone then doesn't make it, then you gotta have these candid discussions with them. And I think it's then important to be candid and try to help the person get to a better place. In this case, I gave feedback on what needed to be done on the team of that person, how that person should interact with others. I recommended weekly peer-to-peer meetings to be. There was also an alignment issue with peers. If you don't see them follow up on that, then you need to have like candid discussions and be clear on that. And at one point, you got to make a decision as well. That is part of it. When I say you got to listen a lot in the beginning, after that, there's also time where you have to be very decisive.
You got to act. You got to be decisive. No question.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and I believe that. Look, when you have set your strategy, then strategy is also about resource allocation, and that means that sometimes most companies don't have like unlimited resource, so you sometimes have to cut or take like open roles away or even existing roles away, and reallocate that to other parts. So I've seen situations where the ratio of solution consultants to AEs was too low. Okay, how do you then find that headcount? And I think those are questions that CROs also often get. Like, okay, where are you going to focus and where are you going to free up resource to reallocate it to other parts of the business? I think that's an important question as well. But then you got to be decisive.
Yes. So you mentioned data-driven decisions and substantiating reasoning and providing evidence for making decisions. I agree. I think it's a combination, of course, between data and gut. I mean, some good leaders have a good sense of things, right? Yeah. But when you first came into your company, you mentioned that the reason you were brought in was because your CEO recognized that there was some, split or a misalignment between things, which I think is an inevitable reality that you get to a point where you need to fix that. How did you, what tools and resources did you use? And if you don't mind, what sort of process you use to create alignment? Like, how did you make an assessment and how long did it take? And what process did you use to do that?
Yeah. Okay, great. So first of all, we have, as a CRO, when you have your team meetings, your leadership team, I like to have I will have the different players at the table. So marketing, product marketing, sales, consulting, they have a seat at the table. So there is a dialogue happening very regularly at the leadership team level. I also do a people leads meeting where you have the second level of leaders. They are getting together and they are meeting. So that's one thing. Then I think you can do a lot through the OKR process. So one of the things, for example, that I'll give you like one or two examples. At one point we saw in Airbase, we wanted to change our sales motion. We have this platform. It has 4 modules in it. And in a few years ago, we were trying to always sell the complete platform, which is a bigger digital transformation. We then did win-loss analysis and we looked at a number of deals and we said, okay, it's probably better to sell product by product or module by module. In other words, to change our motion to a land and expand motion. Okay. Now that's easier said than done, but it has a lot of like implications. And the implications are that, your product needs to be ready to do that. So that's a dependency on product. But also your pricing and packaging need to be able to do that. Now, so we worked with product marketing. Product marketing was in my team to also change pricing and packaging to modularize it. Now, that's also good. But then you need to align the incentives for your salespeople. Because if you tell to your salespeople, hey, I want to do a land and expand motion, they go like, okay, as an AE, I'm responsible for new business sales. So if you let me do the land only, then I'm only going to do small deals. So why would I buy into this? Now, this is then an example that is very cross-functional. So we said, okay, once you win a new logo, you can keep that logo for 12 months. And that allows you to not only do the land, but also do the expand. So sell the second or the third or the fourth module, or add subsidiaries or whatever it is.
Yep.
Now, Then the next dependency comes, because after the land, you close a contract, but then the customer needs to be onboarded. And clearly you want a smooth onboarding process that maybe takes, let's say, 3 months. So there is a 9 months window to then do the expand. Now, when you look at that simple strategy of like, hey, why don't we go to land and expand motion? It's highly cross-functional. So we had OKRs on this that indeed touches like the product marketing team, the product team. Sales had to be enabled. So enablement played a huge role, which was revenue operations. Marketing had to change pricing and packaging. We had to change our website. The onboarding team had to tighten the onboarding processes and so on. So again, this is a very big lever, but it's also, you can see how cross-functional these levers are by nature. And again, you drive then these 2 or 3 of these big initiatives every quarter or every 6 months. That's it. But those are the big needle movers that drive your company forward and that drive growth.
Yeah, it's great. I love this analysis. And you laid out what I think is sort of like a process analysis, right? Like how to incentivize people and plug them into a new go-to-market strategy. Additionally, there has to be some way to, like you mentioned, and this happens all the time. If I'm brought in as a chief revenue officer, one of the things I'm dealing with, aside from what you just mentioned, which is we need to change our model, but it's also marketing has one story about something, sales has another story about something, customers have, there's all these broken, like disparate, almost siloed versions of reality. And the CRO's job, in my view, is to bring coalition and bring unity to all those stories. So there's one story, at least to what degree. So how do you do that? I mean, I know I have a business model where we do this for companies. We actually do this. We call it CRO readiness. But as a CRO, what was your approach to creating data truth? And how did you go through the process of assessing each person's version and then building the right version? How did you go through that? I'm curious to know.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 examples. One is on the alignment with go-to-market and product and engineering. We did a couple of things there. First of all, we established a customer advisory board. And we did that with key customers that really can know the industry and know also our product. So, and a customer advisory board, although we were hosting it, is not for me or not for go-to-market. It's really, I see that as an opportunity for product and engineering to test their hypothesis on the product strategy and to even get direct feedback on the product experience. So that's one thing. We also have what we call like a product council next to like a pricing council. But a product council has like handpicked customer-facing people. So a combination of solution consultants, AEs, customer success managers, product marketeers, and product. And their job is to give like customer insights back to the company, but also to stack rank them. Because it's easy to say like, hey, we want 1,000 things from product. It's much harder to say, okay, these are the top 10 things, and this is like stack ranked, and the other 200 things we don't want to do because these 10 are the most important one. That is a great discussion to have with a cross-functional team and have them make these trade-offs. Because ultimately, your product and engineering team is like a factory. It has a certain capacity. Mm-hmm. And the question as a CRO is like, okay, how can I get maximum output or most relevant output from that factory? And that's by stack ranking some of these asks. The other thing we do then is win-loss analysis, and we look at internal data, but we also use an external agency that interviews customers. And they interview customers about not only about, we do 2/3 of the customers that are customers that where we did not win a deal, and 1/3 is where we won. And we want to know both. Why did we win and why did we lose? And the beauty is that you get sort of like a 10-page report per customer, per deal. And there's verbatim quotes from the customer. And they will tell you either the product was better than competition and this is why we chose you, or the sales rep, they did not do a great job. And we put those reports in the channel that are accessible by a larger group of people. And this is like this is reality from the customer, right? So there's no filter on that data, and it's across everything. It's across our pricing, how we manifested ourselves, our product. So there's no bias to that. So these are things that really help with like working closely with the product. Another thing that I feel really helps, also in working with product marketing when you're making a pitch or when you're doing pricing, is listening into customer calls. So these calls recording are being shared throughout the company, and when we talk about pricing or a campaign, people will regularly say, "Hey, here are 5 calls, or here are 5 snippets that you need to listen to," and that is also like unfiltered truth. And again, this is one of the areas where AI makes life simpler. You can get these call transcripts. You can search on certain themes, but again, these are like realities. And yeah, we have a lot of product managers listening into calls and say, "Hey, I really understand now better what they want from us and how can we can solve these issues."
Fascinating. So
These data we didn't have like 10 years ago, right? So
yeah, no, it's
I think
amazing.
there's so many more insights
It
that we have right now,
totally.
which is
How
fantastic.
about you use Salesforce? I assume, right? You use Salesforce shop.
We do, yeah.
So how did you optimize your CRM? I mean, that's always a mess. Whenever CROs come in, they look at that thing, they're like, "Oh my God, this is
Yeah.
hell." So what did you do to determine how to improve? I mean, was it utilizing third-party Salesforce engineers, or did you have to do an internal analysis around your business to determine whether people are using it properly or whether the data that's being
Yeah.
entered into it is proper? How is another tech, like what other tech part of the tech stack did you evaluate in order to improve system operations and operational consistency?
Yeah, so the implementation of our Salesforce was okay, but there was a lot of opportunity to improve the data.
Okay.
Now, we have a small but mighty internal RevOps team, and we have been investing in that as well, because I think the tech stack is really important. But one of the things that that we wanted to do was do the following: we cleaned up our sales process and sales stages, and we said, okay, as part of having a consistent sales motion, we use some form of medic. So we look at champion, economic buyer,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
things like that. But we cleaned up our sales stages. We defined exit criteria per stage. And then one of the big things that we had to do is clean up fields. There were way too many fields in Salesforce that were not used. There were like 7 industry fields. And we said, okay, what are the things that are critical for us? And if we want AEs to fill out these fields, then we have to explain why we want that, how we're going to use the data. But we also got to make Salesforce then easier to use. So, and part of that, a big part of that is getting rid of everything you do not need. And that tends to be that tends to be a lot. And that's a multi-quarter approach. We did a lot of other things in our tech stack. Our lead routing software, for example, that was sitting on top of Salesforce, was not working well. So we exchanged that. We went to a new one. And this is one of those things where we felt like, hey, we're missing a lot of efficiency in the funnel. A lot of leads are routed the wrong way, or they get stuck, or there's no real-time data enrichment. So yeah, there's a real bottleneck here if you want to increase our funnel. No one really understood well how the technology worked. We obviously had the wrong application. So we said, okay, let's take that one out, put a new one in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we've been making a number of those changes. The call recording part was important. As I said, the call analysis part, I think that is really huge. Critical.
Yep.
This is also where, again, if you one of the things that I always find like a lot of work as a CRO, it's never ending, is enablement. And obviously, you always can get better, but really understanding where can you help your AEs or your BDRs get better. And as part of as I said, we have a broad platform with multiple products. That is great, but then you also need to be really good at discovery to understand which use cases you are talking about. So we overhauled our discovery training, and we really doubled down. We even had a KR on that for a quarter, And we said, okay, let's first do a baseline how every rep is doing discovery. Then we said, okay, this is what we want the standard to be. And now we're going to train everybody. And then they had to do certification with enablement. Then they had to do certifications with their managers. And the ones who didn't make it, they had to do it again. But these call recordings then are vitally important. And then in your sales meetings and in your go-to-market meetings, you can also leverage these call recordings to show, hey, this is what good looks like. This is what the perfect discovery call is. And yeah, we would do then call out people who did fantastic discovery. And this is how you can improve a certain part of your sales force and to get to like excellence. Mm-hmm. And then there's the next part. Now we have, for example, revamped our demo motion. Now we're coming quarter going through that again. And so that's so enablement is a very important lever for a CRO, but it takes a lot of time and effort to keep leaning into that.
Do you use outside third-party consultants to help you do any of these things?
We do occasionally, but we do mostly internal. But for example, we wanted to get better at value selling. So we had an ROI calculator built by a third party that also interviewed customers and tried to get objective metrics on the value that we deliver. And then it had to be built in a calculator and a deck that was easy to use. So that's where we use a third party. But most of the training we will do internally. In the past, I've used like medic training and so on. But yeah, you can do it as an enhancement. But your enablement is a core function of every go-to-market function. Sure. And yeah, your core you can never outsource. So you always need to have a core team as well.
For sure. So I guess the last couple of questions for you. So one would be for the founders and CEOs listening to this podcast right now, whom may right now either A, have a chief revenue officer, or it's maybe not the greatest situation, or they're looking for one. What would be advice or guidance you'd give to a founder or a CEO who wants to bring on a chief revenue officer? What would be some things you'd say would be they should be thinking about or preparing for to make sure that that's a successful hire?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is they need to assess the situation their company is in and what they want from this person. That is number one. There will be companies where the collaboration between marketing and sales is great, and so on. So there the setup might be different. So it depends on the situation. Number two, my view is that the collaboration of a CRO with product and engineering is absolutely critical. With finance is critical. With HR is critical, by the way, as well, and obviously with the CEO. So I would always look for, someone who's not only capable, but who is also, has that collaborative mindset and puts the company and the team ahead of own success in a way. They go hand in hand, but the mentality should be, okay, I'm going to do what's right for the company. And I know that there's all these dependencies and I have my role to play. That's what I would look for.
What type of person should they be looking for? Like, for example, let me give you a little sort of a choice question here.
Yeah.
If you're a CEO and you're interviewing, let's say, a bunch of potential chief revenue officers, and one was like an incredible sales leader, another one was an incredible marketing leader, another one was an incredible financial leader, like which one of those three do you think, just, I know it's sort of superficial, but generally speaking, lend themselves more towards being a good chief revenue officer?
I would say that based on the fact that customer centricity is so important, you got to have someone who wants to be really in front of the customer.
Okay.
And so I either think a very strong sales leader or a strong customer success leader or chief commercial officer, both of those could do it. Now, there are strongly marketing-led companies. So if you're a PLG company, that is where the funnel all comes inbound, where brand is incredibly important, then you could look for a CRO that has a stronger marketing background. Mm-hmm. But for a B2B sales company, with like an both inbound and outbound motion, I think the sales capabilities are still important.
Yep. I asked one question I forgot to ask you before, and just a really quick answer. Do you have a RevOps leader in your business that reports into you? A RevOps?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. That's
Was
a
that
very
person
important
in
role.
place before you got there, or did you hire that person when you got there?
That person was in place, and we have enhanced that team, but we have a very good leader in place.
That's important. Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I guess the second question is for you. So I'm an incoming chief revenue officer. I'm looking for a job as a chief revenue officer, and I'm someone who's got a lot of seniority. I've ran big sales teams. I've ran big marketing teams. I'm sort of like, my next role certainly could be potentially a chief revenue officer, and I'm looking for one right now. What should they be looking for, or what sort of things would you advise them to be thinking about as they approach chief revenue officer opportunities in the marketplace right now?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple of things. First of all, get to know the CEO and spend a lot of time with that person. It's important that you have that there's trust with the CEO. There will be good times, but also harder things that you will need to work out. There's always like things that you need to do together. So I think a capable CEO with great values, I think that is incredibly important. The second thing is look at the TAM in the industry. Is the market big enough? Is it how attractive is the industry? Take the VC view on that. And then thirdly, I think it's very important as a CRO. One thing you cannot do, or I cannot do, is code. So there's a high dependency also on the product and engineering organization. So having a strong product organization is important. It's certainly something that I looked at Airbase, where I felt like product velocity is really high, and there's an openness to receive feedback and to listen to customer feedback. That I think is really important.
This was great. It's amazing. Probably one of the first conversations I've had with a CRO who not only are completely aligned with what we're doing, but your job is, it's great, really great. Perfect case study for how to get this right? And
look, there's always enough to do, right? So it's not that.
Of course, it's never ending.
Through my days, but I think
at least you're set up properly to do it right, which is that's the whole thing. Imagine being in your situation, and they're only letting you run, one department. It's impossible. So I think this is sort of like what I see a lot. But so Airbase, you operate globally. Where are you? Where are your customers located? All over the world?
Yeah, we mostly focus on customers that are headquartered in the US, but have like international subsidiaries. Mm-hmm. As I said, when you have customers of like 1,000, 2,000 people, they tend to have subsidiaries all over the world. So we have customers with big subsidiaries in India, in the UK, Europe, Asia, and so on. So we serve those.
Mm-hmm. And it's Airbase.
We do 200. We do payments in 200 currencies.
Okay.
So really for these customers across the world. And
So it's airbase.io, correct?
Airbase.io, yeah.
Okay. Well, Philippe, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much for the time. I think that people get a lot out of this, and they see what it feels like, what it looks like when it's done properly. So thank you for being here and for your sharing your experience and your expertise in the role.
Yeah, Warren, and thanks to you as well, and thanks for what you're doing for the CRO community. I think they can really benefit from things like what you are doing. So I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for the support. And we'll see. We've got a lot of way to go, but we're getting there. We're getting there for sure. Thank you for listening to the CRO Spotlight podcast. The CRO Collective's mission is to help CROs succeed and help founders and CEOs build CRO-ready organizations. You can find out more information about our services at thecrocollective.com. That's thecrocollective.com. And we look forward to having you join us next time.